You're listening to Generation AI
from Live Person.
Welcome to our show. I am Ruth Sive, and I'm here with my co-host, Joe Bradley. And today on Generation AI, we're going to be chatting with Miriam Vogel, President and CEO of Equal AI and Chair of the White House's National AI Advisory Committee. So get ready to listen in to a very deep conversation about unconscious bias and AI governance. But before we formally welcome our guest to the show, I'd like to play a one-of-a-kind piece of AI-generated content that we created specially for Miriam.
In a realm where AI meets grace, a leader emerges to embrace. Miriam Vogel, her journey unfolds, championing ethics in AI's stronghold. From the White House halls to Equal AI's domain, Miriam's dedication will forever remain. Responsible AI, her guiding light, upholding ethics with all her might. Oh, Miriam Vogel, beacon so bright, shaping a future that's just and right. With responsible AI, you lead the way, ethics and progress, hand in hand, we say. Through Equal AI, her mission thrives, reshaping AI's narrative survives. Miriam Vogel, a paragon of trust, ensuring AI's impact is both fair and just. Miriam Vogel, your impact will prevail, an advocate for AI that won't derail. Equal AI's champion, a visionary voice. In this song, your legacy we rejoice.
Miriam, what do you think? Is it ready for the Grammys?
Wow, absolutely. I can't wait to hear the acceptance speech it offers. My goodness, a paragon of trust, Miriam Vogel. I guess that'll be my new motto.
There you go.
It was quite effusive. I don't know if that's going to be the case every time, but we'll let you know if it's you or if it's just the AI's personality.
That'll be good to know.
So listen, it's great to have you on here. Thanks for joining us. Have been excited to talk with you here. Wanted to just start by just asking you to tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into AI. I don't think you started there. So how did that all come to life?
Yeah, not a conventional path for sure, but in hindsight, kind of all paths led to Equal AI. My background is in law and policy. In law, I had the good fortune to work in tech through intellectual property and other legal issues I was working on. And when I was working in the government, I also had the privilege to work on policies to help reduce bias. So the President's Equal Pay Task Force at the White House, trying to reduce bias in the workplace, and also at the Department of Justice, again, the real privilege to work with Sally Yates, who wanted to create federal law enforcement training for reducing implicit bias for federal law enforcement. And so she saw the through line that implicit bias was a similar animal to address and tackle, whether you're talking about workplace or federal law enforcement. And likewise, Rob LoCascio saw that same through line in AI and understood that my background in law and policy was actually a very helpful segue into addressing responsible AI.
That's interesting. So it was really through this interest in diminishing bias that led you to AI. But what was your first memory of AI? Like, was it a movie or a book, or what was your own personal frame of reference before you jumped into that world?
Yeah, well, I would say the answer to that helps shape that it's not just the interest in reducing the harms and potential hazards of AI. It's really also capturing the innovation and the potential that has always interested me in this field and technology in general. I love the unlimited possibilities. So I think the areas where my mind was really most impressed and confounded and intrigued was, first of all, was watching the Black Mirror episodes. So, I'd seen iRobot and other movies and read the books along the way, but with the Black Mirror episodes, just trying to imagine technology that was almost at our fingertips, if not already there, that just completely changed our world or our reality when taken to the extreme. And likewise, I thought Her was a movie that really captured my imagination and made me think of AI in a really different way than I had at that point, as a friend, a companion, and the emotional connection and the seamlessness that was introduced by that character.
I just watched season 6 of Black Mirror. You should, very good. Very good. It's dark compared to the other seasons. So it was very good.
That's a strong statement.
Really?
It's because the other seasons are already pretty dark.
I know.
Miriam, was there any particular one that kind of got you thinking? I'm curious.
Again, I really love the positive that can be created by AI and not just the bleak forecast from the episode. The episodes that horrified me most were, the camera that was overtaken by those with nefarious intentions and then used to blackmail people to the worst ends, as well as the AI that is used as a social monitor and rating system that afforded your opportunity in life depending on the your ratings, not just your interactions as a person, not just whether you are good or bad, which is problematic enough, but your popularity. But anyhow, so those were ones that I made myself watch to see how it could play out in the worst case. But the one I most enjoyed was San Junipero, where you get to watch AI as a healing tool, as one that creates joy and an interconnection, surprisingly.
I love that episode. Well, that's a good segue. You talk a lot about responsible AI, which I guess is, underpins the good in the technology. Define for us for our listeners what that means. What is the definition of responsible AI? And then maybe talk a little bit about how that definition aligns to what it is that you're doing at Equal AI.
Yeah. So, there's different ways to think about AI that is gone right as opposed to the other that is so often in our conversations these days. And there's different ways to think of it. There's ethical AI, and I think that's both the highest bar, but also the most challenging to define in so many ways because ethics is so dependent upon where you sit. And so really it has to be so personalized depending on the user, the various users, the creator, and all the interplay there. So really such an important area, but very complicated, as opposed to if you're talking about responsible and trustworthy AI. And that's why we focus so much of our attention there, because every company, every actor wants to be or should want to be responsible. And any company who wants anybody to use their services that are powered by AI or that are even seemingly touched by AI will want their products and their company to be trusted. And so I think those are key elements when we're talking about AI, both responsible and trustworthy. And it looks at basic elements. Is it reliable? Is it safe? Is it made for me? Basically, at the end of the day, am I being seen and heard? And can I trust that I'm being seen and heard effectively and that it is being used in the way that I'm intending and not used against me if I'm going to entrust it with seeing me and hearing me? It's making sure that your privacy is respected. It's making sure that it's fair and that if it's a system that you're deploying in your home, that it is understanding where it should and should not be, what should and should not be done with the data. Again, both the privacy concerns and understanding who I am. Is it trained only on a certain population, a certain gender, or will it actually see me and hear me?
And so how do you do that at Equal AI? What are the key? What's the mandate there?
So the mandate is that anybody using AI in a pivotal way, which is much broader than an AI company traditionally. It's any company or organization that's using AI in a way that impacts people, that impacts its employees, that impacts its customers, and making sure that you're using what at Equal AI we call good AI hygiene, which is essentially making sure you have a framework in place, much like cybersecurity, where every company really needs to think about, are they cyber safe? Are they open for intrusions, or have they safeguarded themselves against such potential hazards and harms? So similarly, in AI, you need to have a framework in place to make sure that when used in pivotal ways, it's safe, it's accounted for. Luckily, we have many great frameworks out now to choose from, which was, not the case a few years ago, but now there are many companies that have published theirs online. NIST has a standard framework that really everyone can benefit from and use, and so much easier to implement. Everyone should ensure accountability at the highest levels, really. I think too often AI is seen as an issue off for an IT person in the corner to solve, computer problems as they emerge. AI is integrating in all of our systems. AI can either support or impede a company's values and needs to ensure that. And so we need to ensure that there's accountability at the highest levels. So when and if challenges, concerns, questions come up, people can trust that it's being taken care of seriously, that someone with authority is ensuring that it is safe and that it is being accounted for, and that it's safe for both consumers and employees to raise concerns. I mean, AI is going to continue to iterate and learn new patterns, and you want to make sure that you've built that trust so that people can tell you before it becomes too big a problem. You want to standardize your uses and process, you want to document them, and you want to audit because AI is going to continue to iterate.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It seems like, I feel like right now the space is so rich with responses to AI and so polarized too, that there's a real best of times, worst of times mentality that you can read just by clicking around Twitter for 5 minutes and everyone's perceptions evolving so rapidly. You guys have been thinking about this for a long time, since 2019, maybe before, and trying to take action with government and businesses and things. What's changed for you, if anything, in the last 6 or 8 months as the kind of hullabaloo around AI has really blown up?
Well, it's become a lot easier to talk about responsible AI and have it become something people want to have a conversation about. When we first started, it was a curiosity for people. It sounded interesting, but people didn't really think it was an issue they needed to think through. It was really someone else's issue. AI in general, let alone responsible AI, was a curious, interesting topic, but not one that hit home in the way that it does now for so many people. So I think it's a much more open conversation for people. It's much more something that everyone is grappling with. What does it mean? Everyone has this urgency to use AI and understands the potential perils. I think the other thing that's changed in our conversation is for the first few years, we really wanted to make sure people understood underlying concerns in AI, that it can be discriminatory, it can be biased. For people who did use AI or were curious about it, there was much more of an implicit bias that because it is computers, because it is science-based, it is accurate. Not understanding that it may be accurate, but you don't know what problem it was asked to solve for. And so it may present an outcome that was really not what you intended or reflect biased data that has a biased outcome and recommendation that you weren't prepared for. Whereas now I feel like we need to help people build more trust. I think there's so much concern, fear, emotion attached to generative AI in particular, that now I'm trying to get more and more audiences I speak with to try ChatGPT, try Google Bard, give it don't just fear it, engage with it and bring that hesitation with you so you can have that balance.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It feels like a couple of years ago we were talking about really clean examples on like facial recognition and bias there and things that people might not have seen coming or necessarily known to fear. But then the examples of what the problem is are really clear. Like it's obviously bad if a system can't recognize a certain race or ethnicity. It feels like things have almost switched around a little bit now where, people are nervous because you can talk to this thing, but the problems that it has are maybe slightly less clear in people's minds. Like what do you bring, when you have people that question, like, what should I be most worried about with bias in generative AI? Like, how do you talk about that with business leaders or whoever?
I think it's hard to understand what is really underlying this technology. When you see it generating such thoughtful answers, you build trust in it, and you don't understand that. For instance, if you're talking about healthcare data, well, what health prompts were, what training data prompts, what was underlying the system's learning? Understanding that this has historically been a problem. So, even with narrow AI, more traditional AI, a recommendation may seem really effective, useful, spot on, but if you're talking about medical data, was it based on genomic data, which is, over 88% males of European descent in its training data population? If you're talking about clinical trial data, again, you're going to get mostly white male generated content, which may not be applicable if you're a female or you have a patient of color that you're talking to. So I think really trying to get people to think a layer under the hood, thinking a level deeper of what is under this hood of this black box, before relying on it too much, and understanding that AI, the term artificial intelligence, is really a misnomer because it is artificial. And I would argue it's not intelligence. It is mimicking intelligence. And I wish it was, much more clearly named so that people were not anthropomorphizing it in the way that we tend to in thinking about it as the latter word of intelligence.
What would you call it?
What would I call it? I like that people are using more augmented terms around augmentation or more of an enhancement tool. I'll have to give it some thought, and I'll ask ChatGPT.
Good idea. I think the media has done us also a disservice because there's so much anxiety around artificial intelligence and how it's going to destroy the world. And we've all been exposed to that from a young age through movies and stories. And so I think, we're now at that place where it seems very real and accessible. And so it's hard to let go of those preconceived ideas of what it could be. So I like how you put it, Joe, the best of times, the worst of times. There's so much opportunity and possibility, but so much fear and anxiety at the same time. It seems like the government has also come around to the fact that this is something that warrants their attention, and that they have a role to play in getting us all to a place of responsible AI. I think there was recently a $140 million investment a few weeks ago to create 7 new national AI research institutes. How do you feel about what the government is doing, the U.S. government? Could they be doing more? What role do you think they should be playing?
I think like you, find some reason to be optimistic. I think we have seen a lot of more thoughtful government activity across the globe and in the U.S. as well in the recent years. I think a few years ago, D.C. was not a place where there was, at least in the government, you weren't hearing as many sophisticated government conversations about AI policy from the leadership. Whereas now there are members of Congress who are really thinking in thoughtful ways about what their role should be, what policy should look like. And across the federal executive branch, we're hearing federal agencies who have stepped up and said both what laws and regulations they currently have on the books that are applicable to AI so that people are on notice. It is regulated. People should not be under the misimpression that if AI supports or recommends a decision that it is free from the usual safeguards of the law. It is absolutely likely to be covered under, as the EEOC has said, civil rights laws applying to employment law that they traditionally watch. EEOC has had an AI initiative for several years now. The FTC was one of the first out of the gate with a blog and then follow-up posts talking about, you may not think that you're using, that you are regulated by our agency, but if you are talking about AI in ways that your company is using it in powerful, important ways, is it a false claim? Can you support your claims in the same way that they traditionally regulate other false claims? Are you demonstrating why you are making a recommendation? If someone was not made an offer given a certain financial opportunity, both the FTC and the CFPB have said, that falls within our purview if AI was supporting that determination. So I think that they are starting to really step up in a way that we really needed them to, and clarify ways that we need to be careful about AI use, both as a consumer, but especially as companies are starting to build and adapt the systems.
And what about this idea that AI is going to eliminate, thousands of jobs? Does the government have a role to play there? I think Andrew Yang talked about universal income, and within the context of AI as a threat along those lines. Do you think there's something there? Is that something that Equal AI has in mind?
Absolutely. I think the government has a key role to play in both ensuring that people are AI ready, ensuring that people have digital literacy, understanding what it is that's empowering and supporting so many of our systems. It doesn't mean that everyone needs to be a computer scientist. That's not realistic, and it's not necessary, because really to have effective AI systems, you need to have a multi-stakeholder approach. You need to bring different lenses and backgrounds into AI development in the same way in our society, in our uses, in our adoption of AI. We're going to all bring very different levels of experience and sophistication as well when it comes to our understanding of deeply understanding what's happening. But that said, I think it's absolutely incumbent upon the government to make sure that we are savvy as to what the technology is, make sure that we are capable of participating in an AI economy, that as you say, jobs are going to be lost, but the data show that many more jobs will be created. We need to make sure that our population is ready to participate so they can enjoy both AI and the economic benefits of being a part of the AI economy. And that means both the K through 12 as well as upskilling our workforce so that we are AI ready.
So the EU came out with last week, as I'm sure you know, its first version of the AI Act, the EU Parliament for negotiations. I'm curious to hear sort of how the different approaches, like how you compare and contrast the different approaches, EU versus US, and it seems like they're pretty focused on data privacy and product safety and those sorts of things. Like how do you kind of see the global landscape here?
Well, it's interesting because, you're pointing out two of the leading forces across the globe, but there are so many countries and regions that are now stepping up and trying to be AI ready and to clarify the rules of the road within their region. So EU is, I think, probably fair to say, the furthest ahead by having their draft regulation in place. And the way that they have addressed the situation is by defining different levels of risk for different systems. And depending on the severity of the risk, there's different levels of regulation. So if it's highest level of risk, if it's a social scoring system is the example, one of the examples they've given, then it's absolutely banned in their current draft. If it's high risk, then it'll be heavily regulated. And the areas within that bucket affect many companies, if not most, because it includes employment AI, it includes infrastructure, it includes, many of the ways that companies are now either building or acquiring AI systems. That's a different strategy than what we have now in the U.S. So as I mentioned, there are several laws on the books currently that are increasingly being applied to AI. But in addition, trying to see the horizon. There are bills that have come up, the Algorithmic Accountability Act. Ted Lieu is looking at creating an agency that is dedicated to AI governance and regulation. But we have already seen two significant developments in the US that really inform how we should be thinking about AI governance here. And the nice thing is both of those are applicable no matter where you sit and for different types of uses. So we saw the White House Bill of Rights that defined some of the values we need to be mindful of, some of the risks, and some of the expectations that customers should be able to have when using or deploying AI. And then a few months later, last January, NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, released their risk management framework for AI, which was congressionally mandated and really an important, significant development in AI governance because they took such a comprehensive approach. They created a framework that can be applicable no matter where you are in the AI process, whether you're originating the idea, and they teach you from the beginning to ask, is AI even the right solution for this problem, all the way through the end of the retesting once you have your AI in place and need to make sure that it still applies to the use cases and that it hasn't learned new patterns that are harmful or destructive.
Yeah, no, the NIST document's really great. I thank you for introducing me to it a couple of months ago. One quick follow up on that. What do you see? You're in kind of a unique position to see how the support versus resistance versus different approaches in terms of the partisan U.S. politics. Like, is this a pretty bipartisan issue? Is there significant nuance between the kind of Democrat and Republican take? Or how do you kind of see it playing out in the U.S. political landscape?
Yeah. I have to say it's one of the reasons I love this area so much is because it is an area where you can still be bipartisan. It's an area where there's certainly some element of politics depending on, on certain questions, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of bipartisan support and interest in the fundamentals here of making sure that AI respects laws on the books, making sure that it is that is consistent with our current laws, and thinking about the horizon, understanding the challenge we have here of understanding how AI should look in our AI regulatory policy future. So the AI caucus does everything in a bipartisan way. They really are collegial, and respectful of each other in the conversation in a way that I wish we heard in more political discourse.
Yeah, it's refreshing.
A sparkle of hope for U.S. politics there.
Yeah, I love that as a Canadian. Yeah, so
Canada is really leading on the AI policy front, as you know.
Yay, go Canada.
They have been ahead of the game on with their frameworks and principles, and it's really interesting to see all the AI activity, both government and in industry from Canada.
Yeah, super proud of that. We have a little bit of time left. We're gonna shift gears and ask you a few questions that are a little bit lighter so that our listeners can get to know you a bit. Share with us personally or professionally, what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
I have a cousin who I just admired so much. I loved her way of taking on the world with bravado and class and elegance. And her motto was, and she gave me a leather plaque to memorialize it, that said, "Nothing is impossible." And I believe that is always the case. And sometimes my family has to remind me that just because I can make it happen doesn't mean I should. You could pull the reins back a bit, but I really do believe that if you put your mind to it, nothing is impossible.
Well, pretty soon we'll see ChatGPT at the Grammys then for the beginning of the count. All right, here's one for you. Everybody's got those annoying things about day-to-day life that drive them crazy. If you could automate one thing in your life, what would it be? And what's one thing that you would never automate?
I have lots of answers for both of those. I will start with, I will never automate time with family and friends, the conversations. We've seen it coming out of COVID off of Zoom. I had the good fortune to be at some conferences last week where there are people who I would have, only met on the screen in the year or two before. And because we were off the screen and in person, because it was human-based conversations that weren't supported or augmented in any way, we had so many follow-ups and are potentially creating new organizations and infrastructure based on the follow-up that was off-camera, offline after, as well as the time with family that is rejuvenating and soulful in a way that I don't think AI could ever be. Automating, even the way it is right now, I barely drive down the street without using an AI-supported system to help me get there, even a few minutes faster. But I think as we use it more in scheduling and those tasks that take up too much of our time and mental space and keep us from these important human-based conversations, I like how effective it's been. I can't wait for it to become even more effective and seamless.
That's a cool answer. It's sort of automate the stuff that gets in the way of the humans getting together with each other in meaningful ways.
Exactly.
That's
Love
great.
that.
Well, listen, we're unfortunately at time. I only wish we could have you for an hour or two more, Miriam. And there's so many questions, but I think we've got to kind of cut it there. So thank you so much for your time, and let everybody know before we go, if they want to learn more about responsible and equal AI, where should they go?
Well, thank you for that question. Come to equalai.org, play with our impact assessment tool that we have for your algorithms right on our website that's built on the NIST framework. You can, in your spare time when you're not listening to this podcast, come to In AI We Trust and hear Joe Bradley and hopefully Ruth on there at some point, and look at our blogs and articles, as well as our other documents that are really there to help you support understanding and implementing responsible AI.
Awesome.
Thanks so much. And from all of us, Miriam, please keep up the work and keep AI getting better for us all. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ruth and Joe. Great to see you.
You too.
You've been listening to Generation AI,
Automating Better Business,
a show from LivePerson.
Never miss an episode by subscribing to the show in your favorite podcast player. Please give us a rating, leave a comment, and share the episodes you love. Until next time.